Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, that one sucked. I don't think that was very, very good. Like, not the best thing we've ever seen from our Winnipeg Jets, and that's coming off a Dallas Stars game where they just looked completely exhausted. And with this game coming home, getting one game at home, again, we talked about fatigue before, but one game at home before you go back on the road, you were hoping they'd have a little bit more jump in their step. And they definitely did in the first period. But before we kind of get into the first period, let me tell you about the flagship show of the Game Over Network, which is Hyperdrive Hockey. It is all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries, whatever it is and wherever it is. Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey needs with a fun dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So visit the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. So, getting into this game, you thought, the Winnipeg Jets, they've lost 3 in a row coming into this one. You were hoping that they would kind of have a little bit better of a showing, and it certainly felt that way off the top. You had Scheifele taking the opening draw. He hasn't taken a face-off in what feels like a week, and they seem like they specifically put Vladimir Nemestikov on the first line to take the draws, to help him out in that way, and that felt really good. You saw Joel Hofer going into the game. He was pretty brutal at handling the puck. There were a few times you thought the Jets were going to score simply because Joel Hofer was going to give them one. And it's not too often when you have Connor Hellebuyck for how good he is, for how amazing that man is at playing the sport of hockey. Whenever you can have Connor Hellebuyck be the better puck handling goalie, then you're probably in a pretty good spot, unless it's like, I don't even know who's bad at it. Jacob Markstrom comes to mind. Josh says, they ruined my pro line. I'm so sorry, Josh. They ruined my evening. And then you have Brad Lambert. You come to this game, you're like, okay, it would be amazing if they could get a really good start with Brad Lambert. We might finally get an answer to the second line center before a trade deadline. And then we don't. We might have the set. It's still up in the air. But Brad Lambert, he had a good showing. I see someone's clicking that like button a lot. Thank you so much. But Brad Lambert, he had some good back pressure. He had some really good moments, really good shifts. But the team as a whole really didn't give him a lot to work with. And then another thing off the top of the game, you have Hayden Fleury, who seems to be auditioning for this top 4 role with Samberg out. It seems like that's what kind of the objective of today's game was, to kind of get him, Heinola, and Stanley some of the most ice times. They were taking kind of shifts with Pionk, and you had him with a glorious cross ice pass, something you don't see too often from this man. A cross ice pass right to Kyle Connor. It doesn't go in, but you're like, oh my gosh, the Winnipeg Jets are in it. They're good. They're gonna get things done. And then things start to go downhill. And before we start talking about things that are going downhill, please like and subscribe to the Game Over Winnipeg. It means so much. We just crossed 100, and personally, I don't want to be the least subscribed channel, and we aren't right now, but I want to transcend that. I don't know if we'll ever catch Montreal, but I want to be so much Toronto. I want to have more than Toronto. Okay, is that too much to ask? Can I just say that? And so that would just feel really nice. So we kind of go into this game. We have a good start with the first period. The first period felt pretty good. The Winnipeg Jets were doing some of the things that really that they started the year doing. They're making really short passes that were kind of giving them advantage, making the St. Louis Blues turn. And when you make those little turns, you're just putting people on their heels, and it kind of gives you advantages in small ways. And they're going up the ice, just making 4 feet passes at a time, when later in the game they would almost seem to be like lining up at the blue line, which got a little frustrating, especially against a team playing a trap like the St. Louis Blues were. You had Logan Stanley that first period. He was trying to do too much. He was running in, playing in the corner, and I don't mind defensemen jumping in the play, but I don't think that guy wins enough puck battles for how big he is. You have Logan Stanley also. There was a time where he seemed like he was just out there for a skate. The puck was like 4 feet in front of him, and he couldn't catch up to it. And then you had the Shen hit on Fleury, which, sometimes that can really bring a team together. Adam Lowry went after him. Just love that guy. Absolute beauty. But that was the first period. It was a little bit of a mixed bag, but the Winnipeg Jets were definitely in the game, and I think they were definitely the better team in that first period. They're definitely outplaying the St. Louis Blues. In the second period, though, starting in this period, they were getting just killed in transitions. The Blues just held on to their, just kind of held on to the middle of the ice, and the Winnipeg Jets were just passing it to them. They're trying to break through just the middle of the ice by passing it through. The St. Louis Blues just kept on picking it off, going straight down the other ice, and it just led to a bunch of problems. Connor Hellebuyck had to make some 10-bell saves. I think the highlight of it being when Dylan DeMello just grabbed the puck, threw it right to Matthew Joseph, and then Connor Hellebuyck just slid over, made the save. Absolute beauty. Josh is saying, my friend Josh from school, he's saying Logan Stanley equals Justin Hall. At least Justin Hall shot right, which is a rarity. Logan Stanley, and you know what? We're kind of nice to Logan Stanley on the show. At some point, whatever Logan Stanley does is more of a reflection on Jets management than Logan Stanley. And then coming out of those chances that the St. Louis Blues were getting, you had Hayden Fleury saved a goal, and Hayden Fleury just had a devil and angel on your shoulder type game. He had some real highs and some real low lows, but this was definitely his best play. Is the puck kind of started squeaking through Connor Hellebuyck. Hayden Fleury whacks it on the goal line, keeps it a goalless game. And I think from that point on, you felt the pressure kind of coming on the Jets, and it came to a big climax at the 4-on-4 part. When the Jets had a power play, Gabe Vilardi takes an interference penalty. That happens, guys. That's going to be what it is. But it's how the Jets respond to the 4-on-4. They start the 4-on-4 with Scheifele and Nemestikov. Not the most routine thing you'd want to see. There must have been a plan for Kyle Connor to take a shift with maybe Cole Perfetti, who's a little bit of a slower skater. Kyle Connor's got that speed. That makes a little sense, especially passer, shooter. You can see why Scheifele was out there with Nemestikov. But with that, Scheifele takes like a 1.5-minute shift on this play. And leading to the St. Louis Blues goal, there's a lost battle on the wall. It gets chipped up, and there becomes a 2-on-1. And Scheifele's just dogged. He's trying to get back, but he can't quite do it. We're coming back, and then what happens is it's a clear 2-on-1. Schenn to Kyrou. Kyrou just makes a little move, gets around him. Hellebuyck makes a save, and then Scheifele just on the follow-up hits him in the foot, goes in the net, 1-0 Blues. And you're like, okay, you know what? But we're holding on to this game. Hellebuyck's playing out of his mind today. Right away, off the draw, there's a little bit of a little kerfuffle. Am I using that right? Kerfuffle, a little bit of a mess up. And the result is this 2-on-1, which comes a 2-on-2 because Adam Lowry comes back. Fleury is just on his guy. He's on Dylan Holloway. He's looking right at him. And then because he makes a give and go pass, Hayden Fleury, absolute goldfish, forgets that Dylan Holloway is there, loses his guy, and then Dylan Holloway is able to just score the goal, put it in the net, 2-0 Blues. And from that point, you just felt like, okay, we might be out of this one. It felt a little bit like the St. Louis Blues were just turning it on, and the Jets didn't really have an answer for it. And with going into the third, there wasn't too much. There was that nice Pionk chance at the beginning. He had that nice break. He came in, had a lovely shot, went low glove. And it was just like, okay, you have to get a few of those if you want to score, right? Like, you don't score on every high danger scoring chance you get, especially in the NHL. And you weren't going to do it tonight, especially with the lack of opportunities you seem to be getting as the offense dried up as it has seemingly for the past few games. With one of the stats I threw out today is the Jets only scored 10 goals, make it 10 goals in their last 5 games, make it 11 goals in their last 6. Yeah, that nice Pionk chance. And now I'm going to talk about the most controversial topic of the show. Heinola took a penalty, okay? And I think what this might spark in Jets land is there seems to be 2 camps in the Winnipeg Jets land. There seems to be like Heinola backers and let's call them Logan fanlies. The fans of Logan Sand, the fans of Ville Heinola, almost like a new school, old school thing. And one thing that Logan Stanley was greatly criticized for last game was he took 3 penalties, which put the Dallas Stars on the power play for 10% of the game. 6 minutes, 60-minute game, that's 10%. Now, with Ville Heinola, he took this penalty. The game was already lost, and we're not going to defend it. I just want to point this out, that Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola, They both took penalties. Both are bad. It's bad too. One doesn't excuse the other. And yeah, we have David in the chat. Swaggerville strikes again. Bombers, heavy favorites in Grey Cups over the last 3 years, and they lost to East teams who don't give a blank's ass about CFL football. They follow NFL first-rate league. Interesting Bomber commentary. David, can you kind of like give a little bit more on that? Are you saying that I'm honestly not too sure? With can we get a little bit more there, David? Can we get a little more context there? But with that Ville Heinola penalty, I think the Jets' best stretch came in that Ville Heinola penalty kill. They were doing a clear power kill. They were trying to score. They had a few chances. It was really when St. Louis was letting their guard down. They were trying to go for one more goal, and the Winnipeg Jets were able to get some good chances out of it. And we just couldn't get there. And one thing you kind of notice is you were hoping that when the Winnipeg Jets were having some success in the first period, they were able to kind of make these forefoot passes, gain advantage that way, making the Blues turn on their heels. And one thing you're kind of hoping is that the Winnipeg Jets, instead of making cross-ice passes when they get picked off by the St. Louis Blues, you were kind of hoping for more point shots from the Winnipeg Jets. Because when you take a point shot, the first thing you do is you start looking around to see where the thing went. It might hit some legs, it might hit some sticks, it hits some bodies, and the puck's gonna go in the corner. The puck's gonna drop dead. It does random things and it creates chaos. And the one thing the Winnipeg Jets didn't do tonight is when they had the puck, they were turning it over and they weren't creating chaos for the other team. They were creating chaos for themselves. And by making that point shot, I think it was exemplified on the goal that Mark Scheifele scored. Neil Pionk took a point shot. Everyone's turned around. Everyone's lost. Mark Scheifele had a clear shot to just put it in the net to get the Jets their only goal of the night. And that's all she wrote. The Winnipeg Jets lose their 4th game in a row. Now we're going to start going to some more specifics soon, some more broader stories through the game. And before we get there, let me tell you that the Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, there you'll find our Patreon page, and we're also working on a page through LaRouque, which is a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec, like the Game Over Network, getting our start with Game Over Montreal. For LaRouque, we're aiming to raise $15,000, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that will allow us to employ more people. If you have any ideas for what prizes you'd like to see, or giveaways, not prizes, we gotta be careful when we're talking about stuff on the internet. Crowdfunding offers, let us know in the comments on Twitter, on Instagram, and the Discord server. And if like one of these things, the Winnipeg Jets Game Over mug are beautiful things. I love them. They're amazing. Anywho, let's get started on our second period. We gotta put on the thing. There we go. Excellent. So we get into our second period, and let's talk about putting people in the right position to succeed. And it may not have been super thing tonight, but one thing I noticed about the Winnipeg Jets lineup today is they were very successful in putting like their youngest players, their most kind of not at risk, I'm trying to think of the right word, vulnerable players in, like Ville Heinola, who is a guy Scar Neil talked about. We need to give him some rest. We need to give him a certain amount of games off, game on, because he played so many games coming into his time with the Jets this season. And Brad Lambert, who's playing in his second NHL game. With Ville Heinola, they put him with Logan Stanley. They put him on the off wing when Ville Heinola is looking up the press box, and Colin Miller and Dylan Colland, I'm going to get that name right eventually, Dylan Colland are up there as right-handed shots where Ville Heinola could have played on the left side. And Ville Heinola did a great job. There's a couple times in this game where he was able to push down the right wall and kind of use his backhand to shovel, but it's such an awkward play from a left-handed defenseman to take the puck on his off wing. And some people prefer it. I know Dion Phaneuf was a guy who preferred playing his offside, Nate Schmidt, but Ville Heinola is not one of those guys. He prefers to play the left side as far as I know. And you could definitely see some awkwardness in how that went. And it seemed like the Winnipeg Jets so earlier in the season were so dead set on having 3 right-handed defensemen, 3 left-handed defensemen. That was such a call to action when they traded for Dylan Colland to have that 4-and-4. I'm sure if there wasn't those injuries, Hayden Fleury, I would assume he would have been sent down to keep the 4 defensemen of Morrissey, Sandberg, Stanley, and Heinola on the left side, with Miller, Pionk, DeMello, and Colin on the right side to keep that balance, because it was such a big part of their game early on to make those passes, make things swift. And at the point when you're taking pucks on your backhand, it can be a little tougher for your players. And with that, just Heinola, like, you want to see him have the best chance he can get, and it might have been better for him on the left side. And I think, like, coming into this season, you really thought that he was going to start the season with Colin Miller playing on that left side with Colin Miller on the right. And how many times have we seen that? I believe that was only the one game, his first game, where we saw that kind of setup. But with the injury to Dylan Sandberg, it seems like everything's out the window. All these plans are shot. And with Hayden Fleury's recent play, like, you can't say he's the worst option out there. He's pretty good, especially when they're kind of needing more guys on the left side. He did kind of, in my opinion, kind of have a little bit of a rougher time on that second point, on that second goal. But he's so far this season, he's done everything they want him to do. The Jets, and he's done everything that the Jets have asked of him. He's been up and down the defensive pairs. You're not going to touch that DeMello Morrissey pair. I actually thought DeMello was much better tonight than he was been in the past few games and overall this season. But with Hayden Fleury, it's a nice surprise. And just having the 4 left-handed defensemen and the 2 right-handed defensemen just didn't seem like a Winnipeg Jets thing to do. So it just seems like they're not putting Heinola in the best position to succeed. Yeah, so David said David Quaid said, feel bad for the Jets, though. For such a small population base, it would be great if they make the playoffs. Yeah, it's really nice when we do. We got nice street parties here, and it's just nice when we're able to join the dance. And as a small market team, I'm actually, you know what, the Winnipeg Jets kind of, it's just as they grow, like with the way a team is, just having a team, you're going to gain money through the asset. I'm not too worried about the Jets losing a little bit of money each year, but really it does, with the TV ratings, it for sure must frustrate when the smaller market teams make it. Like, as the commissioner, I'm sure you always want like the LAs, the New Yorks to make the playoffs, or a team like Winnipeg, but it's a sport, like even small market teams can make it. The Green Bay Packers sometime win the Stanley Cup, and that team's like owned by the fans. And anyway, another thing with the Jets kind of lineup decisions was the deployments of Brad Lambert. Now, putting him in the top second line center, perfect. Putting him with Gabe Vilardi was fantastic. And I think with that as well, that lets Gabe Vilardi takes a lot of face-offs for Brad Lambert. That's something they were doing because as a young centerman, usually their face-offs aren't the best coming in. Even Sidney Crosby was really struggling with that, and then he spent a summer hyper fixating on face-offs, just trying to be the best that they could be. But that kind of made sense. What I found kind of as an interesting kind of gap is that you have this guy in Brad Lambert, and he's super fast. He's very fast. That's kind of his calling card, is his great speed. But with that as well, you put him with probably the 2 slowest guys on the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that became a ongoing trend. And when they were trying to generate offense, there's just times where the bursts of speed coming off from a standstill for Vilardi and Perfetti were kind of tough to get things going. And I found this graphic here from JFresh on Twitter, just kind of showing the slowest forwards of the first quarter of this season. And this seems like it's really hard to see. Let's see if we can get that a little bigger. Look at us go. And with that, you see the top speed. You got Cole Perfetti at 16th last and Gabe Vilardi at 20th last. Gabe Vilardi is the 16th in speed bursts above 18 miles per hour per 60 minutes. And then speed bursts above 20 miles per hour, you got Gabe Vilardi and Cole Perfetti on that list. And it seems like through these guys' kind of first stints as Winnipeg Jets, they've been really reluctant to put these two together for any stretch of time, really. And for me, it really comes down to these players are limited in their just in their foot speed, and putting them together for almost the first time with the rookie kind of creates a disconnect. And there was a play where there's a 3-on-3 with Cole Perfetti, Vilardi, and Lambert, where they almost scored, and a huge reason why they didn't is Cole Perfetti really hasn't played with Gabe Vilardi at all this season, or overall. They're not even on the power play together. And when I saw him miss that pass, it was like, oh, he thought that Gabe Vilardi was a left-handed player, because he's been playing with Ehlers and Nemestikov all this time, hasn't really played with a lot of right-handed guys. Even on the power play, he's passing to Iafallo and Nemestikov, Nino Niederreiter, and then just the only right-handed player on that second power play unit is traditionally Neil Pionk. So he's just not used to making those passes. And I think when you're a guy who's as slick as Cole Perfetti, then you're just kind of, sometimes you're just taking a quick look and making that pass, and you can kind of miss things just based on handedness, if that makes sense. And I think that's where just another like little disconnect that happened with the line combinations today. And then with that, this was a game where Scheifele seemed to be trying to get back into things. He was taking a lot more faceoffs, even when Gabe Vilardi was on the ice with him in the third period. And Gabe Vilardi's been super good at faceoffs this season. Mark Scheifele was still trying to make the faceoffs. He was still trying to make those plays. And my question is why? Why are you trying to force this and trying to come back from what is seemingly an injury so fast? Even when you're like, he's missing little plays, he's missing little passes. And I know the Winnipeg Jets are a better team with him in the lineup. Why are we pushing that kind of this guy passes kind of point here? What we need is Mark Scheifele in April, and we don't need to be winning games, and we're not even winning games in December. We are winless in December. Now, it's only been 3 days, but that is a concrete fact, and I cannot be proven wrong until about Thursday. So going off of that, another thing I want to talk about real quick is just like, as the game kind of went on, Mark Scheifele, it just seemed like just kind of the legs got out of him. Mark Scheifele plays a large amount of time in this game, and in every game for the Winnipeg Jets, and it just seemed like the fatigue really started to catch up. And with those line combinations, the way that we're having the two kind of slower players on that second line, one thing the Winnipeg Jets are used to doing is they'll have their left winger just seems to be the guy who comes back and does that pressure. He does the back pressure. You see Kyle Connor usually breaking down and trying to break up passes. You see Nikolai Ehlers do it when he's healthy. Nino Niederreiter is really good at it. And it seems like that's the left wing's job. And one thing you saw from the Winnipeg Jets is tonight is that was Brad Lambert's role on his line. So not only are you kind of putting this one player in just a different situation than he's used to being with these two wingers who have never really played together, but you're also giving him additional responsibilities that the other centers on the team don't seemingly have. Because early in the season, they made this transition where Nikolai Ehlers started the season on the right wing and Cole Perfetti on the left wing. They flipped them about after the second or third game, just so that Nikolai Ehlers can be in that back pressure position. That seems to be a system that the Winnipeg Jets run. And for that second line, not only were there three guys who barely played together, but it was also just a rookie getting additional kind of tactics thrown at him that he wouldn't have gotten in training camp. And with that, we're going to kind of go into the third period. And before we do that, let's talk about Game On. Game On is a show hosted by the Game Over Network. It's about getting all your hockey news in 10 minutes or less. I believe Graham's restarted the main Game Over Network show on the main Game Over Network YouTube channel. And real soon, we're about to get Game Over Winnipeg. Harrison Lee is going to be running it. I say this every show, but it's happening. Just wait. Hold on. Just keep checking back here. You know, if you want your Winnipeg Jets news in like 10 minutes or less while you're at work, it's every weekday. Just keep tuning in to the Game Over Winnipeg YouTube channel. So for the third period, this is kind of my chance to get to talk about whatever I want to talk about. But for the third period, or for the overtime period, you guys get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So let me have my time here. You guys can start kind of commenting away in the chat. We had David here for a while. We had my buddy Josh from school as well. But if you guys want to talk about anything that you want to talk about, any really specific talking points, let's get that started now, making sure that we can kind of get to them by the time we get to the overtime period. So the first thing I want to talk about in my third period is Patrick Laine. Patrick Laine returned tonight from injury for the Montreal Canadiens. My boy scored a wicked power play goal, and it was so vintage Patrick Laine of just holding onto the puck, kind of cupping it on the toe of his stick, ripping it top corner. And I was like, man, for Patrick Laine, that's a really close shot, because when he was in Winnipeg, he was making those shots from the blue line. He was just never stopped, just his really unique release. Love that, man. Glad to see he's doing well. And if you see this picture that I stole from Andrew Berkshire's Twitter, Instagram page, just look how happy Cole Perfetti is for him. If you're listening to us on the podcast side of things, just know that Cole Caulfield is looking as happy as he could ever be, hugging Patrick Laine from behind. And Patrick Laine looked like he just screamed. And I just love that for him. I'm super glad that he's finding some success in Montreal. He just seemed like over the past couple of years in Columbus, getting traded this summer. Just such a tough run, some mental health stuff along the way. But glad to see our guy Patrick Laine is doing so well. I believe there's just so many people in Winnipeg who want to see him do well, who want to see him score goals. And we wouldn't even mind it if he did it for another Canadian team. So I know we had a Game Over Montreal show tonight. I believe Andrew was on it as well. And I hope that they just gave him his flowers. Al Broderick just says, damn it. Yeah, like it just feels like he was the one who got away. It just seemed like such a perfect fit with us in Winnipeg, having that Teemu Selanne kind of connection, having that Finnish goal scorer in Winnipeg just felt so right. And it just felt like, you know how the Buffalo Sabres, they never felt like they just wanted Jack Eichel. They felt like at every given moment they looked at him, they just said, you're not McDavid. And I believe it was Douglas Murray, even at the draft combine, at the draft lottery, he was just like, man, he was a little sour. And it just seemed like every time it was like, man, what's an analogy? There's got to be a good one. But it's like whenever he looked at him, he just saw not McDavid. It's like it's like an evil stepmother looking at the stepkid, just thinking like, you're not mine. And it felt like that was a little bit of the tale in Winnipeg for a bit, where he was in all these rumors, and he was just he seemed like he's in the trading block for so long here in Winnipeg, where it was like it just seemed like the Jets didn't want him. They made a clear choice to commit to Kyle Connor as opposed to him, or at least it felt like it. And they had these three wingers in Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, and Nikolai Ehlers, where it felt like they could only keep two of them. They traded Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that turned out to be a little bit of a disaster towards the end. But I'm just so happy, no matter where he kind of came from, there's still a part of us in Winnipeg, a huge part of kind of section of us in Winnipeg who love this man, are so excited to see him succeed. And yeah, it's just really nice to see him kind of come back from his injuries. It seemed like he was injured for so long. They tried playing him at center. He's not a defensive guy, and it's just scoring goals with that patented wrister, man. It just brings back a lot of memories, especially of that 2018 run, and that's the patented 2018 run mention of the show. And then another thing I want to talk about today is just roster construction. One thing that's been a problem for the Winnipeg Jets for a while, and over the past 2 years, speaking of goal scorers, is when they get down, it seems like it's so hard for them to come back over the past years. And at the beginning of this season, it wasn't a problem. They could seemingly score at will. But with the Winnipeg Jets over the past 2 years, goal scoring is their kryptonite. And it feels like there's games where they try to be patient, and they get a really good strike. But eventually, there's always these stretches where they just can't seem to score. And for me, it's like, okay, you're Winnipeg. You can't go out and get a game breaker. They have no trade clauses except if they are on their RFA years. The guys who are RFAs who are available are usually like 1 year left, like Pierre-Luc Dubois was when he went to LA, or a guy like Jack Eichel. And how often do guys like Jack Eichel get traded? Like once a decade, and it hasn't been 10 years yet. And so when it comes to this construction of the roster, and you're thinking like, okay, we have the top line, we have the second line, but there's not that third line of scoring. And you see with these guys who are contenders, like you look at the Vegas Golden Knights, they went 3 lines deep for their Stanley Cup run, because as they had Jack Eichel, even if they had Jack Eichel, they wanted 3 scoring lines. And with the Winnipeg Jets, that Adam Lowry line is fantastic. You love it. It sets the tone all the time, and it's just such a great line for starting the period, ending the period, after a PK. After the PK, those guys are all great on the penalty kill. But what you seem to be missing there is just that third line of scoring that can really help, that can really like punch above its weight class, that can give you 4 solid lines. And I wonder, after the every time the Winnipeg Jets go on the power play, they throw out this line of Barron, Lowry, and Appleton. And you wonder, they really haven't played Barron with Adam Lowry since Nino Niederreiter has gotten here. And it's such a good fit. I don't know if you want to mess with it, but is there a chance you can do some moving around, and maybe instead of getting, or if you get a second line center at the trade deadline, can you move Nemestikov down? Can you try a third line of like Nino Niederreiter, Nemestikov, Iafallo? Is there something you can do there to get that third line of scoring? Because if you don't have that top end talent, can you make this relentless kind of top 9 with a Adam Lowry, Barron, Appleton fourth line that's just, you just roll 4 lines and you can't be matched by any other team in the NHL? And because the Winnipeg Jets, they already don't go toe-to-toe with the elite players. Like when you have a guy, like you look at Barkov right in Florida, he's always going to be matching up against the top players of the other team. The Winnipeg Jets don't have a system like that because they need Mark Scheifele available. And I don't think Mark Scheifele is a great defensive player along with Kyle Connor. They've been better this year. But I also think that, at their roots, they're not going to be able to put up those defensive results like an Adam Lowry. So if you're already and when it comes to that, if you're putting Adam, I remember watching when I was a kid, I just watched the NHL Network and I just watched old playoff games. And I remember watching this old Pittsburgh Penguins and Montreal Canadiens game. And I remember the commentators being like, okay, guys, the Pittsburgh Penguins are playing Jordan Stahl's line against Mike Camilleri whenever he's on the ice. And I believe this was the Halak year. So this is a series where the Montreal Canadiens beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they were like, okay, they need to get away from this because every single shift that Stahl's stepping over the boards, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin aren't. And you wonder with the Winnipeg Jets, is getting in the way of their offense the success of that Adam Lowry line? Is there a way to get, maybe the answer is not getting moving Lowry down, but maybe it's trying to get another offensive piece with them, someone who can really kind of step up the offensive output of that line. And while it's been so good so far, Adam Lowry came into this season 16 points. Last show we talked about how he's only crossed 30 a couple of times, and he gets mid 30 as kind of his high. Is there a way to kind of unlock more offense out of him? Nino Niederreiter is a guy who can score 20 goals in his sleep. Is there a way to get more offense out of that line and kind of get a better defensive player up in top of the lineup where you can play your offensive threats a little bit more as opposed to having your defensive guys out there so much of the time? And with that, kind of wrapping that up, we are about to go into the overtime period. So make sure, while we're talking about this, make sure you're liking and subscribing to Game Over Winnipeg. As well, make sure you're typing your questions in the chat. They can be related to hockey, the Jets. They can be related to the things that are not about the Jets. It can be related to anything you would like. And as we kind of get going with that, let me tell you about Game Over's merch. I love talking about Game Over's merch because I am such a fan. And I throw up the same pictures because I own this hoodie, I own this mug, and that QR code is where you're going to find this stuff. So let me tell you, and I'm going to just take a sip from this Game Over Winnipeg mug because it's beautiful. Let me tell you about our merch. And what better is there a way to support something than by rocking it as clothing or sipping out of it in all of your remote work placement meetings? I'm currently in a remote work placement as a part of my education, and I just sit there with my Game Over Winnipeg mug sipping away. I have 3 of these. One's for coffee, one's for my like midday Coke Zero, and I just love it. So we have the Game Over apparel line, which has dropped. We have 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design, or you want to wear your love for goalies proudly with our live or die by the goalie design. In Winnipeg, we are often living and dying by the goalie. Or if you just need another coffee to get you through the winter, we have you covered. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. Use our QR code right there to on stream now and take a look through our apparel store and help rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. All right, awesome. If we have any questions, we'll just keep that stuff up there. If not, we'll wrap up the stream. And yeah, things are going pretty good here at Game Over Winnipeg. We're doing some nice things. We got some nice merch. Things are lovely. The Winnipeg Jets, we gave them a hard time tonight. They're 18-8. That's 10 games above 500. They're still doing pretty lovely. You can't be too upset about an 18-8 team. They did fall out of first place, but you know what? Whatever. It's just a little frustrating when the Winnipeg Jets, since they've been back, they've been to the third round. Well, that one time they won one game in the third round. But at the end of the day, is that really winning something? I don't know if it really is. Just, food for thought there. And it seems like we don't have any questions. We'll just kind of wrap up the show then. And for us here at Game Over Winnipeg, we will be back on Thursday after the Jets game in Buffalo. That game's at 6 o'clock local time here in the Central Time Zone. So we'll be going live at about 8:45. Ty will be back for that game against the Buffalo Sabres. My name has been Brendan Labarre. This has been Game Over Winnipeg, and I don't have a closing statement. So I will see you guys next week. Next week, Tuesday is my next game. So cheers.